This is Matthew McConaughey.
Natalie Portman.
James Patterson.
Michael Ian Black.
And you are listening to
Five Questions
with Dan Schawbel.
Nick, welcome to Five Questions.
Thanks for having me.
How did you originally develop your passion for food growing up and then eventually turn it into a full career?
So I don't want to sound like a broken record, but without a question, family. I was lucky. I had food around me all the time growing up. And the thing is, I feel like I never actually looked at it as a career. My whole life, basically, I never thought about it as a career. I just looked at it as a hobby. And I don't know what it was that made me not think about it more seriously as a career until even late college. But it was never something in school that was an offering where I was during my education. It just didn't feel like something that I could jump on. I felt like I kind of had to go with one of those more strict career paths, I think. And then eventually it just was that one thing that kept drawing me back. And sometimes the answer is right in front of you. And it just was one of those things that I didn't see until relatively late, which is fine. I got to explore all sorts of other things, but it was family that just made me fall in love with food. And then it was just my general love for food that eventually made me turn to it and realize that I think this should be my career.
Yeah, especially because unless you go to like culinary school, you're probably not pushed into this career, especially because it's not really a path for everyone, right? Like only a certain amount of people can do it and make a living at it. And for me, it was, I've written a few books myself. I've done speaking, and a lot of the things I originally did was the more for passion projects. Like started my own magazine in my early 20s. And eventually, then I realized that, there could be money in a career here, right? Because obviously if you're not making any money, it's hard to do it full time, especially if you are supporting yourself and maybe other people. And so I think organically, it probably happened to you where you started getting certain opportunities and then maybe started getting, an agent and various other people around you. Then right in front of your face, you're like, oh, wow, this is actually more than just a passion project. It's more of a career and something I can do long-term sustainably.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Again, it's one of those funny things where you sometimes don't look right in front of you for the answer. And then it was there. And I kept ignoring it in a way. I knew I'd always do it, but I just kept ignoring it as something that I could do forever. And then I don't know, it just hit me one day.
So your new book is filled with a lot of different recipes. It's called Knife Drop. How do you decide which recipes to include in the book? And is there one specific recipe that you think has been really caught on by your followers?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing for me with this book is that in all the videos that I've created in the past, I think I've really dug deep in terms of making really entertaining food videos and these kind of wow factors and all this stuff. And sometimes the very simple recipe can kind of get lost in all that, if that makes any sense in terms of just people watching. I think 99.9% of them aren't going to reproduce what I'm making at times just because it's so crazy or it's expensive or whatever. And I do that on purpose in a way just to show someone an experience that they may not otherwise see. But I think with this book, I focused on just taking a bunch of recipes that would be recognizable and accessible and recipes that truly anyone at home can cook. And I won't say there aren't expensive ingredients here and there. I mean, there are, there are lamb chops, for instance, right? Those are extraordinarily expensive to the point that I won't touch them most of the time I go to the grocery store anymore, though they're fun for a special occasion. And if you are going to have them on a special occasion, there's a really fantastic recipe in here for them. But in general, this book has ingredients that you can get anywhere. It has dishes that you're going to recognize, but I've put my own creative twists on there. And I worked really hard on thinking about my entire life, all the different food experiences that I've had. Again, staying away from the really out there crazy extravagant recipes or ingredients. And I think it's just a really great, well-rounded collection of fun, approachable, accessible recipes.
And I think it's different. I mean, if you compare and contrast social media with, let's say, this book, social media, you have to kind of get crazy to be able to get the attention for people to want to share it and be like, oh, I've never seen this before.
Right.
Whereas something like a book, especially in today's world where the cost of food and the cost of living is going up, to make it accessible. So like, the person next door has the time and the money to be able to pull it off. I think I think really, making something that's kind of easy to do is and not and pretty cost effective is very important.
Right. Certainly.
It's a different objective, different audience in a way.
Yeah. I hope that I hope that the message gets out that I've that I've created something here that truly is different from most of the videos that I have made in the past. And it's not that I'm totally going to also shift my content to follow this. I think the videos, again, that I make, you have to make things that are crazy sometimes, and you want to show people things that, they're not going to see anywhere else. And so it's fun for me to kind of express, express, use that as a creative outlet, I guess, when making those videos and do something crazy. But this is different. And I hope people realize that.
And what are the foundational tools that someone who is inexperienced in the kitchen can use to start preparing great food?
So when you think about the basics in food and cooking, you think about knife skills. I think about just familiarity among ingredients and techniques. And I don't think you have to get caught up in the very confusing, complicated French technique. I mean, you don't need to know every type of knife cut. You don't need to know the names at the very least. And I think some people maybe would get upset by hearing something like that, but the reality is anyone can get in the kitchen and anyone can go and cook, and you don't need to know all that stuff to know great food and to make great food. That's the truth. That's the truth. And I think a little bit too about kind of, it's funny, but just even being in the kitchen and not being afraid of oil, spitting out of a pan, stuff like that I think just, being comfortable in there, I think is really, really key. So if you walk into a kitchen and you have a general kind of basic familiarity with, you open up a fridge and you kind of know what you're looking at, maybe generally how to use a carrot or how to use, a piece of raw chicken, whatever. If you know that, and you're comfortable in there, you can pick up a knife, the general basics of knife skills, then I think you can cook. I mean, that's all it really takes. Just being comfortable, having those very basic skills so you're not going to get hurt and you're not going to be scared. And you can kind of command the kitchen. I think that's all there is to it.
Yeah. And going back to what I was saying before, the social media content that you develop is very shareable, right? You're doing things that, really catch people's attention and make them want to kind of share. And that's why you've been able to, or part of why you've been able to grow such a vast audience online and on these networks. But what is your process for collaborating with celebrities? You've collaborated with, Tom Brady, the Jonas brothers on various food related content. What does that look like when you're working with them on, using these recipes and making food?
Well, the easy thing for me is that everyone loves food. And so when you approach anybody and ask them to talk about it or think creatively about it, most people are happy to do it and they are excited to do it. And so that's what makes my job easy. I think when doing any of those partnerships with, someone like Tom Brady, for instance, just the first thing that jumped to mind for me was he hates strawberries. It's very public that he doesn't eat strawberries, which I think is really funny and fun. And so we wanted to do something with that. And then he became very well known for his just intense, strict, healthy eating regimen. And I think avocado ice cream was the first thing that jumped to mind for me there. So just doing something fun with that was perfect. The Jonas Brothers had a song come out that was related to waffles in some way. And so that was easy as well. I think just the great thing is food is everywhere and everybody has to eat. And so that's one thing that makes it pretty easy sometimes. It's just it's such a such a relatable thing, and it makes it fun to think up some sort of creative idea every single time, and it takes you and the videos in directions that you also could never have really predicted or imagined sometimes too.
Well, I also think you mentioned a really, really key point. You do research before you start to reach out or have your team reach out or take queries to do partnerships and content with different celebrities, right? What is Tom Brady like? What is he not like? What is it? Jonas Brothers, they have a song out. Oh, we could do something around that. So I think that level of research and thought can kind of make it more organic and timely. Like obviously with the Jonas Brothers example, new song about Waffle House, doing something around that. So there's a timing component to it. So I think that level of thought has really helped elevate those partnerships and the content.
Yeah, no, without a question. I think the general idea too of having, offering something as well. I think in the social media space, there's a lot of time where people are just used to being asked for something with nothing in return. And I think one of the things we think about a lot is just, what can we offer to this person? Like, how is this going to be beneficial for them? How is it going to be worth their time? And so I think there's always a reason for that too.
Absolutely. And what's your best piece of career advice?
Just be good to the people that you work with. I think that's the most simple thing.
And it's pretty easy too, right?
Yeah, totally. And feed them well.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's a big perk with working with you.
Yeah, 100%.
Not only do you get paid and get to kind of go on your journey, but
totally,
because you're in this world and you're making food, that's a nice thing to have.
Yeah, I think it's funny because people see the Japanese, like the Wagyu beef that I have all the time and that kind of thing, and they're all jealous that I get to eat that all the time. But the reality is it's something like that, or too much of anything it just becomes, you want something else at that point. You don't want it anymore. And so at this point I very much save something like Wagyu for very special occasions, and oftentimes that means that if we're cooking it here, then the camera guy will just end up taking a giant chunk of it home, or there's nice little perks with that, which is great. So I don't think anyone will ever be upset about taking home an extra lobster or a bunch of random. I'm just looking around for like what we might have used in here sometime recently, a bunch of random chocolate bars that we're done with,
Definitely not. Yeah, that's great advice. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.